we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Bigmark, and today I'd love to welcome our guest, Jacquelyn Wood. Hey, how's it going?
Thanks for having me. Good.
Absolutely.
Thanks. How are you?
Great. You know, just plugging away out here, keeping it on the down low. It's been kind of a wild ride out here in Ontario. You're joining us from beautiful BC. How's everything out there?
Yes. It's pretty good. We got our first snow the other day, so everything's looking really pretty.
Nice.
All things considered, life is kind of going as usual.
Yeah.
Nothing too much, but definitely not locked down. So that's good. We're happy about that.
So are you guys like, there's not as much going on right now for like lockdown?
No. So I guess we've been kind of the same since June almost.
Okay.
Things are open, limited capacity. I guess the most part is we're not supposed to hang out with people outside of our kind of living circles, but people do what they want still. But we've been able to keep numbers down, and
good.
It's worked well for us, I think.
Okay. It's been like more or less, I'm sure you heard from other people, it's been like full on lockdown here, stay at home, state of emergency, everything in Ontario, right? So
that's what all my friends and family were saying.
Right. So like, you know, the restaurants have been shut down, and it's basically opening up this week kind of thing. So it'll be a couple weeks till this hits the airwaves, but hopefully by then it's going to be even more open. I feel like once they crack the lid a little bit, it's just going to get blown off. Like everyone is so antsy and just ready to go.
Yeah. I work in a bar as well, and I found that every time that they add on, like they extend our restrictions of like, don't do anything and just hang out with your immediate family or whoever you live with. Every single time they release a new one, which is basically just the same as the old one, we get like a huge spike that weekend. Like people are kind of over it. They're like, no, I'm still going to go out. I'm tired of staying home. I did it till the time you said, and now it keeps going more. But I guess, I don't know, people have to live their lives still and keep a sane state, whatever works for them. Like you can't punish people for doing too much, I don't think, in that sense. But
absolutely. And that's what I'm saying too, is that I think that you know, they tried to be really strict, and I think that that's the only way you can kind of deal with everything. But people are kind of realizing that they're being cooped up, and you know, not seeing people and not being able to do what they kind of want to do is having a little bit more effect than, you know, just you know, being able to say, hey, you know, we're doing the right things, we're taking the precautions, but we're still able to like have that social aspect, because you know, we're a species that needs to see people, right?
For sure. Like physical health is one thing.
Oh my gosh.
But then like social, emotional, mental health, or all these other realms that kind of get neglected when you just stay at home. And so I think as long as you're cautious and you're respectful and you know, don't go too crazy, then it's all about balance.
That's the thing. It's balance. And then the thing that scares everyone is that if you're asymptomatic or whatever, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're able to spread it that way. And that's just been everyone's concern. And I mean, you know, I think, like the virologists and immunologists, you'd think that they'd be able to kind of get things more under control. And by now it's been, you know, over a year now since we've been dealing with this. Right. So, but again, I feel like, at least in Ontario, again, our biggest thing is that it worked for us when last year, when we didn't really know, quarantine everyone, keep everyone out. But then it was like, now we're still using that same technique, quarantine everyone, including the healthy people. And that's not usually how we rock it. And if it's like, you know, if it's considered to be like the cold, then it's going to be something that we have to obviously live with. We don't shut down the economy because of the cold, right? So anyway, that's been wild. Like, but at least we've been able to do like some art and stuff, right?
Yeah,
Nice,
definitely.
nice. So what have you been working on lately?
I'm on a bit of a mid zone, I guess.
Cool.
I struggled a bit at the beginning. I think
Okay.
there was a lot of pressure to do a lot of work since there was all this free time.
Sure.
But then on top of everything else going on, I felt that I didn't have the mind space to create a whole lot.
Right.
But I did find this kind of interesting floral aspect designs that I was working with for a little bit, which were really beautiful. I was painting on mirrors. And it was kind of this like self-reflection as well as kind of being surrounded by the beauty around you. And like we see all this beauty and we're always taking it in. And it's like, I think it's appropriate to connect yourself with that because we're all a part of this world.
Yeah.
But it felt very commercialized. Like
Okay.
people really enjoyed it, but they were like, you should do this. Like this should be what you do. And
right.
And then that added pressure of like, oh, I don't know if this is what I want. And just, it didn't feel very purposeful anymore.
Right.
So I've kind of taken a step back from that, kind of looked a bit internally and thought about like why I went to art school, what I chose to do or what I want to do with my art. And so I've been kind of reevaluating all of my surroundings and what inspires me. And I'm hoping to get more along this path of, I guess, more what my relationship is with art. And I think that's just my experience with nature and then using art to kind of put that out there for people to see and hope that other people can kind of understand this beautiful world in a way that is similar to I see it.
Sure. That's beautiful. And I agree with that. I think that is so wonderful. That's like, I think as artists, that's what we want to do, right? We want to bring those experiences to people. And especially now, I mean, like, I totally know what you mean about that whole where someone says, hey, this is what you should do. I love this so much. I want to see more and more. It's funny how as the artist, you take that to be so, it's like a paradox, right? It's kind of just like, you take it as like, oh, does that mean that's all I should do? Does that mean everything else I do isn't as good as this? But
it almost prevents you from growth.
Yeah.
It feels like you want me to stay right here.
Right. And it's becomes this where I feel like as the person saying that they feel like it's a compliment. But again, it's like, it's almost like as the artist, it's tough to not hear that and feel that pressure for sure.
Yeah. It's like a catch-22 almost.
But I think the one thing that probably is or people are saying is not only that the art is beautiful, but it's also, I think that's what people are looking for so much right now too, being so cooped up, having to stay inside, not having any connection with nature.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe.
I mean, that's all I can think of as far as why people would probably be so drawn to that too. Again, not only the fact that like, cause I saw it too, and it's wonderful and absolutely. And like, again, I think that people are going to be drawn to that and they just want to see more. That's all I can think of as the person giving that, but giving the compliment, I should say, but as the artist, right. You feel like that daunting task. And it's almost like, you can still do that, but then still obviously explore your other passions as well too.
Yeah, I mean, it works great for gifts, great for commissions, and anyone, if people do listen, for those who have asked me to do these works, I have never regretted doing any of them, and I've always like, I enjoy painting and I enjoy creating the design and everything. It's just to make it my sole practice isn't really.
Well, you mentioned fulfilling. Like it felt commercialized, and it would it be like that kind of feeling of like selling out almost? Did you feel that, or like when you say commercialized, what do you mean? Kind
of more like just doing it to sell, not necessarily selling out. In that, but way. I guess I have this fear of being like a craft market artist.
Sure.
Not that, and a lot of people do that and are really happy doing that, but
I know what you mean.
it's just not for me.
Sure.
And I think, you know, there's always stepping stones, and I have gone to shows where you make a bunch and
Hmm.
you hope to sell,
Hmm.
and there's prints of it and duplications, and that's okay.
Hmm.
But I think to do something solely for kind of, it's almost kitschy,
I understand.
to like make little trinkets and stuff, and I just didn't want to do that.
Sure, sure. And it's tough, right? Because at a certain point, as an artist, and the business side of things, right? Like the industry, right? It tends to clash, right? Because artists and stuff, we're all trying to we're all like exposed nerves, just showing all this stuff that's so deep, and trying to bring this and share it with people, and get them feeling that same feeling. Meanwhile, we also have to think like marketing, and think like, how am I going to sell this thing, when it was never the intention was never to make money on it.
Hmm.
But then as soon as they kind of meet, they tend to kind of cancel each other out, and one tends to I don't know, outshine the other, right? You tend to either be, I'm only doing this to sell it, or I'm only doing this because I love it. And then sometimes it doesn't sell as much just because you're not pushing it the way that everyone thinks you should.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of, it's hard to make money
Sure. Yeah,
off art.
absolutely. For sure.
um yeah, I guess, and it's like selling your worth
Mhm.
too. So you're like trying to decide almost what you're worth, and then
Right.
if the person is even going to like agree with
Mhm.
that, or like I've had people where I've done paintings for them and stuff, and it's very nerve-wracking
Right.
to present someone with something that you've created for them, because it's very raw
Mhm.
and like emotional, and
Absolutely.
for them to then like give you money also is, I also feel weird about it,
For
especially
sure.
when it's friends or family who have asked me for works. It's like, this is something that I love
Mhm.
for someone who I love,
Right.
and it feels weird to monetize it,
Absolutely.
because I want to just share what I do, and I want,
Mhm.
if someone likes something, I want them to just be happy.
For sure. For sure.
But then I, you know, I'll bartend the rest of my life, and that's not the goal either.
No, absolutely. But I think at a certain point, as all artists, and any artists listening, we have to have that confidence at a certain point, and just know our worth, be confident in that. And people will pick up on that. And if they truly love the art and support it,
Hmm.
that was a lot, with the music that my band was putting out, was like, you know, we're making this because we love it, but obviously, there is an industry attached to it. And obviously the music industry is a little bit different, because it's a little bit more, it's relatively regulated. Whereas art can be so, like visual art and everything else, can be so different, because people have paid exorbitant amounts of money for certain
Hmm.
pieces, and everyone knows that, and we all know. And it's weird how certain like niches, get a little bit more attention versus others. And
Yeah.
it's strange to see which artists do become, the quote unquote famous artists, because a lot of them, again, aren't necessarily in it for the money. And that's the thing, is that once we know our worth, we have that confidence. It's almost like we get to just create, like you said, because you're passionate and because you want to share, and then people will just be happy to give you support, because they want to
Hmm.
support you too. But
Yeah.
that's so much easier said than done. For like, as a person, again, especially as an artist, who, artists tend to have a little bit more sensitivity to things, and we're a little bit more, because we're potentially in touch with our emotions a little bit more, trying to express them, that those dealings tend to be really strange, right? And that's why bands
Hmm.
have managers, and that's why, people
Hmm.
hire people to kind of take care of that stuff, right? And
Yeah.
but it is tough for sure.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see like where this kind of journey takes me. I am really excited, and I feel like I've felt more confident in what I'm doing, or what I plan to be doing,
Mhm.
than where I have been in a long time. and
That's
and
great.
that's, I'm really excited about that, and I think my stuff is going to look a lot different.
Sure.
So we'll see what people think about that. But I think
Sure.
I'm ready to try something new. I used to do printmaking a lot. I
Yeah.
really liked printmaking. It was like kind of what my major in school was. But
Okay.
then after moving out here, just I didn't get into a studio soon enough, and now you can't get into a studio unless you're already a member, which is understandable. That's okay.
Sure.
But it's really hard to do printmaking without a press.
No doubt. No
uh,
doubt. For sure.
so yeah, I'm not sure. I might just try more lino cuts,
Okay.
because then I can still work on drawing and I can still get into that design aspect. And you can do lino cuts at home, which is a
Cool.
good way to kind of reintroduce it. And then, yeah, I've always liked doing things with India ink, which is just like a black ink and you use it
Right.
with water. And I
So
think
cool.
I've never really done anything serious with it. It's always been my sketch material.
Okay.
So I think doing more of that kind of stuff on a larger scale will be really interesting. And
Very cool.
yeah.
I've always loved that about visual art, is that there's so many mediums too, right? I mean, not to say in music that there's different palettes you can use, but you know, they tend to be genres, I find, in music, where certain bands, you know, that we love, you know, you look at like Zeppelin, where they have country songs, and the Stones, and like if you look through their catalog, they have R&B and they have rock and roll and all that different stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where I love about music, that you can kind of transcend those different genres, and that can be your different medium in a sense, and including the instruments. Those are probably more like colors in a sense, but the mediums definitely, because again, like you can rewrite a song in a certain genre and it has a completely different feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just I love that. Again, I love that fact about visual art, that you can just explore those different realms. And again, I think that just kind of harkens back to what we're saying, is that if you have those passions to even certain mediums, that just, again, that just might be your movement, that era of your
Yeah.
artistry, right? Like many other painters and visual artists, right? They've
Yeah,
gone
for
through
sure.
movements, right?
Yeah, I think like that with the music is definitely like comparable as well,
Sure.
because there's no way I think that you can start one thing and continue to do the same thing without exploring and branching out and trying new things, because it has to
Absolutely.
keep your mind fresh, and it helps
Mhm.
you, I think it helps you learn and helps you grow, and maybe you
Yeah.
can bring certain elements into each one. Like you don't have
Yeah.
to be strictly rock or strictly country or strictly R&B, but you can
Sure.
bring even just instruments that
Mhm.
are typically used with one style of music versus another,
For
like
sure.
the amount of rock that has like saxophones and
Yeah.
things that would be considered like a jazz instrument or a
Right.
blues instrument that just
Right.
add that other layer of kind of soulfulness to it.
Right. Or the Floyd using like a slide guitar, which is usually used in country,
Yeah.
and Gilmore was able to use that in such a cool psychedelic way. But yeah, 100%. That's so cool. And do you tend to see that in visual art too, where there's almost like cross, I don't know how to say that, but I guess like cross influence through different mediums.
I think so. I guess,
Mhm.
I mean, there's obviously like mixed media
Right.
artists, which is, I think, does,
Collage stuff and
yeah, that kind
cool.
of is a different level or a different category than I think.
But techniques too, I guess too, right? You can
Yeah,
use
but I
those.
mean, I'll draw something and then I'll paint it, or I'll
Mhm.
like maybe I'll have a canvas and then I'll draw on the canvas with marker and then I'll kind of
Right.
paint within the marker, but you see the
Okay.
drawing through it. I guess that would be
Very
kind
cool.
of like a marker and
Mhm.
paint, but not
Right.
necessarily. I guess it's still mixed media.
Sure.
I don't
I know
know.
what you mean though, but that's the thing, and that's interesting too, is that because I even see that in music too, where people do expect you to kind of be in a certain genre, and when you do branch out, like I don't know if you're a big Rush fan, but Rush went through, right? Rush was, you know, they each album almost was like a different band, and
Yeah.
I know in the late '80s they went through a big era where they were using a lot of keyboard, and that kind of, even within the band, I've heard that even Alex Lifeson was kind of not against the keyboards, but I know as a guitar player, keyboards and guitar usually inhabit the same world, so they tend to clash.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
right. So that's one reason. So because So basically, if you split music simply into like low, middle, and high range, like for the sound,
Yeah.
usually you can't have too many instruments occupying each one of those spaces, right? So
Fair.
obviously bass is low end, right? You don't want to have like a really low synthy sound because that'll just drown out the bass, or you don't want too much bass that it kicks out the guitar, or sorry, kicks out the bass drum. And then mid range is usually like the vocal and a little bit of guitar. And then
Yeah.
high stuff is like cymbals and like really high keyboards or stuff like that. So again, and guitar can kind of move in through there. Anyway, I know within the band it caused some friction, but I know a lot of fans were kind of like against them branching out into this whole new world. And at the time in the 80s, synth and keyboard stuff was brand new. It was like a new thing for at that point hundreds of years we had like the same instruments, right? So it was cool, and musicians were down. Yeah, it was exciting, and musicians wanted to try this stuff, but then it was different. It wasn't YYZ, it wasn't Tom Sawyer. It started to be something different, and then they, when I say lost fans, some people probably didn't dig on it, and then they had their other stuff to still love. But again, I respect that so much for any musician, any band, to be able to say, you know what, this is what we want to play, and this is what we're going to do. Again, I always say, like, Zeppelin did, Hot Dog, and then they did Kashmir, and it's like, right, that's very different, but it's the exact same band. And if it's good music, it's good music. And people get so hung up on these genres, and they're like, oh, I don't like, and I'm the first one to say, like, oh, I don't like country. But again, some of my favorite bands have done country songs. It's just the overarching genre tends to be like a stereotype. And then you just associate that with the same thing with any other genre, right?
Yeah, I was having actually a conversation similar to that with a friend maybe last week or something, where we were talking about, because someone had said something where, oh, I don't like their new stuff. Like, I've been a fan since the beginning, kind of thing. Like, I like their original work. And it's like, yeah, that's great. And that's really good. But, I think if you're going to be really proud to be a fan from the beginning, it's important to realize that, like, it's really good for the band. Like, they've branched out, they have more followers, they have more fans, like, they've been able to become more successful, and you should be happy that, like, this band that you love is, like, growing and experimenting and trying new things. And I think it's the fans who are, like, long lasting, or like a true fan, not necessarily the fan at the very beginning who like the original stuff and that's all they want from them, because it's very restrictive, and it's very I don't know, it's almost selfish that they just want the band to make music that they want to hear.
Yeah, they just want to preserve you, and they want to keep you in a glass box and keep it like that forever, as something to say, I like this and I don't want it to change. But most of the time, the reason why you liked it is because it's new or because it's different. And then all of a sudden you're saying, oh, I want it to stay the same. And it's so interesting is that it's not to be too bombastic about being an artist. But again, if we're the people who are continually, if you're trying to be at the cutting edge of things, artists are the people that are driving the art, essentially. And, art imitates life, and life imitates art, and all that stuff. But I think that at a certain point, the artists that take chances and the artists that do break the mold are the ones that are going to be, the quote unquote best artists. It's always tough to say that. It's tough to give an award for art. I remember Pearl Jam said that once. Eddie Vedder got a Grammy for best album, and Eddie Vedder goes, I don't know what this means. I don't know if it means anything. And it was because, like, what are we doing here? We're now objectifying or like subjectifying art, or objectifying art when it's supposed to be subjective, I guess, right? It's supposed to be however you actually experience it, because we're trying to take our inner feelings and our inner experience and put it in the 3D, in our reality, in the visual context. And that can be so misinterpreted by so many different people, right? They don't know. Like, again, it's funny. I don't even know if the red that I see is the red that you see. We agree that we're looking at the color red, but my inner experience and all my memories and all my previous experiences with all that, with that color, or even whatever that sense experience is, all comes in, and it all affects my then opinion of the piece or experience or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. I don't even think I like the color red, to be honest.
Sure. Well,
you know,
exactly.
And it's like one of those things where I don't really like it. I don't really use it as
so true.
Pure form, or
right.
Same with blue. I feel like whenever I paint with blue, I was doing all these works and I was like, man, I feel like these paintings miss something. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm missing, like, they don't look finished. And my buddy was like, feels like they need some blue in it. And I was like, I don't like blue. I know it's like a primary color and it's the color of the ocean, but it just never felt very natural to me. I was like, you don't see really that many blue flowers. You don't really go to a forest and see blue. Like, you don't really see blue on our bodies. Like, it's like associated with death.
I guess our veins a little bit, but yeah, that's the thing, is that it's like
the non-oxygenated portion of us is
so true.
Blue. And and then I added it, and then I was like, whoa, this was like this level of like color that I was missing, but just for some reason I personally was never using it, and it took someone else to say, hey, you should try and add this in and see
so
how
cool
it works for you.
Wow. An example of when someone actually makes gives you an idea and it works, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool though. I mean, like, that's the thing, is that it is nice to have other people and collaborate sometimes with people, because they can give you that extra spark of inspiration that maybe you don't go to. But I think at the same time too, is that that's what I think that we do love about certain artists, is that we all have our habits, we all have our tendencies, we have our likes and our dislikes, and that comes out in the art. And then the people that happen to have this exact same likes and dislikes, well, that'll be congruent with that. And I think that's why potentially things change, is that as people creating this stuff, and as the artists, we're trying to make something new, whereas people, when we give it to them, again, they want to put it in that nice case and they want to keep that forever, which again is perfectly beautiful. But that's the other experience. That's the opposite experience of when we let go of the art and put it out into the world, and we say, hey, everyone, like, here it is. This is, again, we've exposed ourselves, and here you go. Right. Is that now all of a sudden we've put it in this judgy realm, and we're asking people to, appreciate it, and hoping that they're going to appreciate it as much as we do. Right. But again, that's that authenticity. You want to stick to what you like, and that tends to work for you. And then all of a sudden you have someone else that gives you an idea that is great. And in that case, with that suggestion, it did work out. And you got to be open to things, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Right. But that's what we're trying as young artists too. Right.
Yeah, I think I've been really fortunate after moving out here, just like with some jobs that I've had, where I've met some people who are also just absolutely wonderful creatives. And now we have this little gang kind of where we all are exploring our own passions. And it's really nice because it's always like everyone is so supportive of everybody, and everyone's always giving each other feedback, or whether it's like support through buying art or anything like that. It's or just posting it on Instagram or telling their friends about it or anything like that. It's really, really nice to just kind of be surrounded by those people who are also exploring their own journey. And then you can kind of feed into each other and feed off each other and help each other and like give and take what you need from each other. And it's really beautiful.
So cool. That's so important to have those people around, to have a circle of friends that you can feel that you do get that inspiration from. Because I feel like there's so many people, they don't have those people around them, that not even necessarily colleagues, but even just other friends too, where they can bounce ideas off of, and it can be really constructive. Because we can all have friends that, oh, that's great, I love it, whatever, and then maybe they're not artists and they don't know necessarily how to give any potential constructive criticism, or even just they just are so supportive that and maybe they're not necessarily also artists, and they're the best to have as friends, and it's wonderful to have that support. But again, it doesn't always lead to that growth, right? And
Yeah.
then there's people that have friends that don't support them too, right? Even, right? And
Yeah.
that's even worse. And I think that that's the only way that we can grow. You know, I know, like, even in like music scenes, right, that sometimes it can be cutthroat. You can just, you feel like you're this island, and you feel like it's a competitive thing, and if you don't get that commission, someone else is, or if you don't get that opportunity in the gallery, someone else is. Meanwhile, if you have friends and you can be cooperative, then you know, you guys can set up a show yourself, and you can all support each other, right? And
which is what we do.
so cool, right? And
Yeah.
and that's the thing, like, so I know in the music scene, like in New York, this is like the punk scene in the early 80s, you know, the Ramones, everybody. It was like they would try and like screw over the next band. Like if it was like a set, they would like pull the plug on somebody, or they would like, because they, again, it was that cutthroat idea. Whereas in Seattle, in the grunge scene, like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, all those dudes, they all knew each other, and they did other bands together, and they did other projects together, and it made for essentially one of the best music scenes that happened in the modern era, right? And that's truly what happens when people kind of put their egos aside and they go, listen, you know, we're only going to get better if we support each other, because if we just criticize each other and critique each other over and over, we're only going to drive ourselves further and further away. We're not going to create any movements. We're not going to do anything that's of any significance, right? Yeah, of course, there's individuals that rise up, but I think that as a collective, we always do better than as individuals, right?
For sure. Yeah, and it's just to be able to grow with someone, and it's so much easier to be supported by people than it is to do things on your own. I think having independence is really important, and I know for myself personally, it was a really big part of my identity for a while, and then I kind of realized, I was like, I did the independent thing. Like, I don't have to prove that to anyone else, like to myself, to anyone else. Like, I know that I can do it.
Sure.
I've lived on my own. I've done my own thing. I've supported myself. And it's like, I'm kind of tired of being alone. And it's nice to have friends and people, and whether they're people you know or they're strangers. But I think everyone is just stronger and has more access to a more fulfilling life if you surround yourself with people who are also looking for that same thing. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, it kind of makes me sad when people want to isolate themselves. And obviously there's different personalities, and some people want what they want, and that's, I'm not criticizing that at all, but the people who out of an ego based drive or selfishness, like I don't, maybe it works for them and it's not for me, to each their own, but I think there's just so much love in the world, and people are always really happy when they're fulfilled with more love.
Absolutely. You got it totally right. And I think the other thing too is that you said, like, you know, you did try and do it on your own. You tried to that experience. And I think a lot of those people that are stuck in that mode have never tried the opposite of that, which is the more cooperative experience. Right. And I think that you can only gain that knowledge from experience. Right. And I think that people get so tied up and so hyper focused on their own way of doing things, and they just want to keep hammering and think that eventually they're going to reach the tipping point and it's all going to work out, right? But not to get too like evolutionary biology on us, but like, again, we grew up we evolved as a cooperative species, right? In the descent of Darwin's books and everything, it was always about, you know, they say it was always about survival of the fittest and all that stuff. But again, it was more about cooperation and love. And that's how we became, you know, the human species, right? Is because we were able to work together so well. And it's funny because there's this wonderful book called This Is Your Brain on Music. I don't know if you've ever.
I have that book.
So good, right? Yeah. It's actually, so that's a Canadian guy. He's out of McGill, right? And they talk about like how before early in our civilizations, everyone was a musician. We had communal drum sessions, or chanting sessions, whatever. Everyone in the village was technically a musician, and I don't know about this anthropologically, but I'm sure everyone was able to create some type of artwork as well. But was somewhere along the lines in our history is that the best of all of us started becoming the only person that started doing that. So the best drummer, the best musician then became the only person that made music. And then people got just as much pleasure from watching them and gathering just to watch them do it. But at a certain point, we were all doing this, right? And I think that we've gotten so far away, and we're here to today, where now artists are a very small part, like people that at least identify as an artist are a very small portion of the population. And again, you get so many people going to witness this, or again, you get so few people that actually become, like that, again, like that type of artist too. But we all kind of have that in us for sure.
Yeah.
But again, that comes from a place where we were all working together too, right? So that's something that for sure gets overlooked. And again, in this, especially now with COVID and everything, it's like you're even more like you're not even allowed to get together with other people. And this is great, doing Zooms and doing all this other stuff's great. But again, being together, and especially creating and collaborating in that space, can be so special. And I've mentioned it a ton of times, right? Like being in a band is a little bit more, kind of clicks, because obviously you're all working together. But again, anytime
ideas off.
Yeah. And anytime artists do get together, I think what comes out of it is so special, versus obviously, when everyone becomes so isolated. Because again, what we said right at the beginning, it's almost like boom, all of a sudden we have all this time, and it's like, well, I wasn't not creating before because I didn't have enough time. I was still doing my thing, even though there wasn't a global pandemic, and now all of a sudden we have this time. And then it just creates this pressure. And it was this weird thing in the artist community, and I say this for all artists, that it was like, hey, now you have all this time, now create, do all that stuff you wanted to do that you weren't able to do. And it's like, again, it just became this huge daunting task, and it ended up like turning off a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and they were stressed
included.
Yeah. And it's stressful.
So stressful, and very very, I don't know, like I don't think people were in a very positive mindset either.
No.
Which also makes it really hard, regardless of how much time you have. And like, I think creativity comes in ebbs and flows, and you definitely can't just turn it on. And obviously inspiration comes a lot easier for other people. And some people need to really get themselves into a routine or a habit or a mindset in order to really get their creative juices flowing.
Right.
And it's difficult to do when you're limited to access those kind of realms that you might need in order to create.
Yeah. Well, our creativity doesn't really, blossom from survival. Like when everyone's worried about like, are we going to make it to tomorrow? People aren't really, so apt to start creating anyway, or like at least, to do that. And I think that a lot of people that were able to just kind of slough it off and just keep hammering have been really ignoring kind of what's really happening too. Right. And again, we mentioned it already, but I think when you're a more sensitive person, you're gonna experience all this stuff. You can't just put it aside and be like, I look at all this time I have now. It's like, also, there's time, because it's like a global pandemic and it's emergency. People are making sure, like, it's not like I was sitting at home biting my nails, but that feeling exists even in like the global consciousness, where everyone, because it's a global pandemic, everyone is experiencing this, everyone's nervousness, everyone that is actually sick and in the hospital, and like really not like, all of that energy is still coming off them, and it is affecting all of us, right?
I
think so many people have just been ignoring that, and ignoring a lot of those feelings really throughout this time. And it's going to have like some type of like psychic consequence, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Like, I think eventually people who haven't dealt with it. I mean, again, you know, there's been people that have been processing it in a very healthy way and doing their thing and getting back on track as things are starting to kind of hopefully start to move into a better place. But again, I think there's been a lot of people have just been like head down, just nose to the grindstone, not worrying about it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, all that stuff. Why do I feel this way? Why am I anxious? Why do I feel the way I do? Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's been really sad. Like, I think it's hard I personally have been very fortunate to not have lost anybody, but you look at the numbers and like a lot of people have died, like actually died. They're gone from this world, and like they had families, they had loved ones, they had friends, and I'm very grateful that I haven't known someone or that I haven't gotten sick or anything like that, but just the amount of sorrow that people are experiencing, and with that also just this kind of never ending thought of when it's going to be over. And on people couldn't say goodbye properly because they can't see people, and yeah, it's really sad. And I think it's easy for a lot of people to feel like they're not being affected, which is I think why this has gone on so long, because people are able to just, if you know, I can't see it so it doesn't exist kind of thing, or it's not happening to me, that kind of mentality. But and I haven't been perfect, but yeah, there's a lot of grief, I think, that isn't being kind of recognized.
Totally. And that's the thing, is that I think people get so, they're just, again, they just get wrapped up in their own experience and everything. But I think people just don't really realize how much their emotions are actually influenced by other people. I think we've become so possessive of our feelings and our inner emotions, and that comes from culture saying you got to get yourself in order and all that stuff. It's being reinforced, has to be individual. The individual needs to change their inner state, but that is also so much affected by how other people are experiencing life. And again, in these scenarios where so many people are experiencing real sorrow, real loss, real emotion, that is blossoming out to everyone who, and as far as even to the people who go, oh yeah, like this doesn't mean anything, I'm okay, I'm not going to get sick, it doesn't, or whatever, they're probably still feeling some type of inner anguish. And that contention between them saying, oh, it doesn't mean anything, and their inner state of potentially, hopefully, if they're in tune with it or whatever, they're also feeling these inner feelings, but they just try and come up with something to distract them, some other type of rhetoric that they can say that just lets them forget and all that stuff. And I think that if we're not processing that stuff, so one sec, okay. So, anyway, sorry, my buddy's just doing a little change with the camera. We're all good.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, like, so, yeah, it's just like, again, that people, once we kind of can really grasp the fact that, oh, you know, I'm understanding more that my feelings are being modulated by other people's actions or other people's feelings too. You can kind of step back a little bit. You can kind of observe that feeling. You can kind of observe and have a better understanding. Because I think, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be feeling this stuff. Obviously, this is real. But I think that once you have a little bit of a better understanding that this stuff is coming from, you know, the experience of just being a person, being a human, and that everyone in this world, that we are connected and have that connection.
And we're all experiencing it like together. Literally, this is one of the first times that every single person in the world is experiencing the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially in our lifetimes too, right?
Still like really kind of beautiful, even if it's not a positive thing.
Precisely.
Because we're still all in it together, regardless of what our position is globally or internally.
Yeah, you nailed it 100%. That's the thing, is that from every person, no matter what status, no matter what place in society, that we are all being affected by this. And again, once we understand that we are experiencing this as a species, or as just an entity, as a spiritual entity, we can kind of look at it and say, hey, how can we start to make little changes to help make this a little bit better? Again, like you said, that just saying that this is actually could be a rewarding experience, that it's not all bad per se, that it's not necessarily all, it is negative, but it's not necessarily bad. And that's that balance that you have to, unfortunately, you have to have dark to have light, right? You have to have moments where it's not going to be all happy, and to really appreciate those times when there is beauty, and when there is great experiences in life, and times where we get to go, hey, this is what we're all working towards. This is why we still are who we are. And this is, and again, I've said it before, but man can't live on bread alone, right? This is why we have art. This is why we have poetry. It's that whole Dead Poet Society thing, right? Where it's like, there's so much more to life than just like living, right? Than just like eating and working and like sleeping, right? And that's again where the artist does come in. And because we're so sensitive to that, I think we're the ones that are experiencing things so differently, yet we're the ones that we but what we will create from all this will hopefully again help people. It's even just literally like experiencing their own emotions, right? Because you can look at a piece of art and experience all these emotions that maybe you never really were in touch with until you saw whatever that was that you had to see. It could be anything. It could be a sculpture, it could be a painting, could be any type of art, a song where you hear it and all of a sudden it takes you to that place where you always needed to be. But you have to be open to that. And I think unfortunately people have closed themselves off to all this just to survive. I think it's a survival mechanism, truly.
Yeah.
But in all this, I think people have closed themselves off more, and hopefully we can blossom back open again, right? Because I think that hopefully we don't get stuck closed, and then we'll have to trying to deal with these wounds for who knows how long, right?
Yeah. I think like even with my own practice moving forward, like I really want to get into this kind of more natural depictions, and not necessarily to the same level of realism, but more so just representational. But I've always been kind of really captivated, I guess, by nature, and whether it's like a massive scale, like a landscape, or just the tiniest thing, which is the fact that a tree creates bark in order to protect its inner like molding so that it can move water up and down, and I think nature over time is just so resilient. And I just want to bring all of these little details to light so that maybe people can see a little bit of our own selves in that, because as a species, as any species, we are also very resilient, and this is shown through this, like people are pushing through and still trying to stay positive and still growing themselves. And I think there'll be like a lot of self-reflection that will come through it, but I also hope that a lot of people will kind of see it as a way to realize that like there is a lot of beauty in this world. And I'm an environmental artist, like through and through. Like obviously I also want our natural landscapes to be protected, and I live in a city, but I hate cities and all this stuff, but I realize that we need them. It's but yeah, just to kind of bring this awareness to our natural landscapes, and see how much of it is really reflected in ourselves.
And I think that's the thing, is that we've been so so cooped up and detached from nature, especially people living in cities. That again, hopefully that once we're able to get back out, people, that appreciation can only grow more, and we can really only that connection can get re-solidified again, because you said, like we say, cities unfortunately disconnect us from the nature, but again, that gives a little bit of a backdrop. It gives a little bit of that kind of balance where it makes you only appreciate those landscapes and that nature that much more, because there's also, it depends on your perspective, but there's beauty in the cities too, right? Just
I
not
definitely.
and again, I totally agree with you that they have, like, there's so much wrong, but again, people's experience usually tends to have that kind of contrast. It needs to have some type of balance, but that reflection really only does happen in that nature, where you do truly see that, when you can imagine a river and then the blood flowing in your veins, and then look at and just see nature within yourself, and that's also reflected outwards as well, right? And if you're able to capture that and share that with people, I think that's so beautiful, for sure.
Yeah Thank you.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, it was it's a tough time, right? Because it's like, again, we have that pressure to create, and it's like we can go out and we can experience some nature, but again, when everyone is just kind of closed off and all that, there's just not going to be that one-on-one experience, and because we do want to experience it with other people too, right? And I think that hopefully that once we start opening things up a little bit more, that it'll just that can be, I don't know, like cultivated, I guess we could say, right? Is that we just want to keep that feeling going, and keep spreading the love, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, onwards and upwards.
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah. Well, it was wonderful catching up with you, and we'd love to have you back on.
Sure, maybe once I get some stuff done.
Well, that's what I'm saying. As soon as there's more coming on, and we want you on, and want to let everyone know, because that was one of my biggest things, kind of getting this thing going too, is that I want to have my friends on that are creating and that are doing things, that I want to get that word out for everyone too. And
yeah, again, you've always been super supportive of me.
Oh, absolutely.
I've known you for like a decade now, and you've always had my back and always loved my stuff, which it means a lot to me.
Absolutely. You know what? And that means so much too. Cause you know what? I'm there to support, and that's what we can only do, right? We can only help each other grow. And like we talked about today, right? Is that as that group, we want to, we'll grow more working together and supporting, and hopefully that love and support, helps you continue to do what you do, for sure. Cause it's great. And anyone who's listening and watching, where should they go and check and follow you? Where do you want them to go?
My Instagram right now is at jqwood.art. I'm working on a website. I've been redoing it, so I don't have a website for you yet. Okay. But if you head over there, then that'll lead you to my stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, wonderful.
Lots of trees on it. Lots of pictures of mushrooms, some art.
Cool. Super cool.
It's nice. It's pretty. I like it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm loving it too. And again, it's so cool. Again, you're able to still express yourself, still show all that stuff you've been doing, simultaneously still creating new pieces, and everyone, I'm looking forward to the new pieces, and I'm sure everyone else is too.
The new pieces.
Awesome. That's great. So again, like I said, I can't wait to have you back on, and then we'll keep everyone in the loop, for sure.
Sounds good. You make some new music, and I'll make some new art.
Wicked. Hey, we'll put it together, and then there you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thanks. Good. Beautiful. Thanks for listening, and check out Jacquelyn's stuff. And please support the podcast if you like it. Support it. Check out the Patreon. We just launched it, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Bye.
See ya.